Hi there, thanks for joining me today. My name's Jo. I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator based in the UK. Today I'm sharing this card with you again. Now, I made this last week on one of my blog posts. It was a little bit of self-indulgence on my part because I love colouring and I love to sit in front of the TV some evenings and do some colouring. And I just made this card, but it seems to have been really popular and everyone's been asking me how I do my colouring blending and also the no line technique. So I thought today, for my Monday mashup, I would create something using the same technique, but we're going to create a slightly different card. Now, I think the reason this is so striking is because of the dark background. So I think that is really what has sort of caught people's eye, really. So I'm going to show you just sort of the colouring techniques today, and then I'll give you some sort of measurements of sort of sizing and things like that, and then also I will make up another card just using the bits that we do today. So I'm going to put that to one side. I'm going to use virtually the same colours today, just that I'm having a little tweak on what we're going to be using, and I'm going to be using just our basic white normal A4 cardstock. I'm going to stamp these and then I'll probably just trim a bit off just so that I've not working on such a big area really. So what we're going to be using is the Delicate Dahlias. So this is part of our celebration offering. So this is free with a £90 spend in the UK, and that differs obviously depending on what country you're in. And this is one of our distinctive stamp sets. So we have these elements here which have got natural shading on, so when you stamp with normal inks you'll get all this beautiful shading in. They show up so much nicer in the darker colours rather than the lighter, but also we've got these outlines. Now you can use these together which look really beautiful, but what I did for this one is, as I say, the no line technique. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So the first thing we need to do is to take our stamps. So we want the outlines, not the distinctive ones. So I'm going to be using the leaves and the large dahlia. Incidentally, we've got some most beautiful dahlias in our garden at the moment that are absolutely huge and they're really, really gorgeous. So no line technique. So basically it is what it says. So when we actually colour our image in, you don't see any lines. The lines you see are shading lines, okay? So what you need to do is you need to stamp your image first, but very, very faintly. So for this red one here, I actually used a mixture of Flirty Flamingo and Poppy Parade. Okay, so they're quite far apart on the colour spectrum, but obviously tonally they work quite well together, and I'll explain that a bit more as we go along. On this one I used Daffodil Delight and Calypso Coral, but I'm going to try and do it with Daffodil Delight and Pumpkin Pie today to give us more of an orangey sort of effect and see how we go on with that. So let's start with the red one. So with the no line technique, you basically want to stamp an image that is very faint, so that when you paint or you actually colour over it, you actually lose that outside border. Now you can do it a number of ways. One of my favourites is to use Sahara Sand, because this is a really nice sort of subtle colour. It's quite pale. Even on first stamping it's quite pale, so you can get quite a nice sort of soft image with that. However, if I'm using a colour, I tend to try and use the colour that I'm going to be using in my actual colouring. And when I say that, it doesn't have to be the exact colour. So, for example, Flirty Flamingo, I could use something like Petal Pink because it's really faint. But you just have to judge whatever you're using, because sometimes you can still see the brown edge if you use Sahara Sand. So I'm going to use Flirty Flamingo today. So the first thing I want to do is just to ink my stamp. Okay, and I'm just going to stamp this onto an envelope that I've got here. This is just scrap. So you can see my first image. I'm not sure if that's in camera. You can see my first image is actually quite dark. So what I want to do is now to stamp this without re-inking on to my paper. So can you see that that line is now really quite faint? In fact, I could possibly even go one fainter. So I'm going to try it again. I'm going to ink my stamp. It's had a moment to dry, so I'm just quickly just stamping it again. I've stamped once, I've stamped twice, and then I'm going to stamp for a third time. And can you see that line is now really, really faint? So much so that I'm almost losing this little piece up here. But that's fine, because what I will do is I will have my actual stamp set close by, so I can actually sort of see the lines that I'm following. So I'm actually going to go for this one because it's really, really faint. Okay, so I'm just going to take a pair of scissors just so I'm not working on such a big area. So this is my really, really faint one. I can put my ink pad away. And as I say, I'm going to be using Flirty Flamingo, and I'm also going to be using some Poppy Parade. Now, I might not necessarily use all four colours because we've got a light and dark in both of these colours. I'll certainly use the two light pink ones, and then probably one of the red, but we'll see how we go. I can't recall what I used actually before, so we'll take a chance and see what's what. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my dark layer first. Now, everyone differs on how they like to colour with Stampin' Blends. Some like to start from dark to light, some do light to dark. There's no right or wrong, it is absolutely totally personal preference. So I'm going to start off, I'm not sure if I'm going to use the dark one yet, so I'll just pop that to one side. And I'm going to start off with the light Poppy Parade. So obviously this is still quite dark. And I'm just going to add some colour. And you'll notice I kind of use a bit of a sort of flicking motion just to lay down my first lot of colour. Okay. So that's my first layer. I'm then going to take my dark Flirty Flamingo, and I'm just going to travel over the top of my Poppy Parade, but I'm just taking that layer further up my petal. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to concentrate on where they join. So where they join, I would just use a little circular motion and I would get them to blend together. Now, looking at this, I think I probably used the dark rather than the light Poppy Parade, because I can see it's already starting to lose its colour. Now, that's because of the petal pink. So I'm going to go back and use the dark. So you can add layers, but what I recommend is that you allow layers to dry as much as possible in between. They dry in seconds, so it's by the time you've moved on, it's generally okay. So I'm just going to blend those two together again. Okay. Now, because these are alcohol pens, whichever way that you put your pen, so if I go that way, my ink will continue to travel for a little bit going in that direction. So what I've got my tops muddled up. So what I like to do is to take my light one and I'm going to travel back in the opposite direction. So I'm coming back towards the center of my petal, and by doing this it stops my ink traveling away, and then it will bring the color back towards the center, and by doing that it can prevent you from actually falling over the edges and things like that. So I can touch this up as much or as little as I want. Once I get to this stage, I will probably move on because I want to now make sure that this is drying, and then I can come back and touch up if I want to. And I always move on to a petal that doesn't join this petal. So I'm going to go for this little one in the middle here. Incidentally, the little tiny ones in the middle I'm going to come back to. I find those easier to do afterwards just because they're so small and you can sort of lose the definition a little bit. It's much easier once you've got some colour. So I've started with my dark Poppy Parade, and now I've moved on to my dark Flirty Flamingo. And again, I'm travelling over the dark poppy and just moving it in the direction of the end of the petal. And where they join, just remember just to add a little bit of extra just to get them to blend. This is my light flirty flamingo, and I'm going to bring this back towards the centre. Okay, now as you go over with your dark flirty flamingo, what happens is it kind of brings all the colour down. It makes everything lighter. So you'll find that you'll probably need to go back in with a little bit more of your poppy and a little bit more of the dark flirty flamingo. But what happens is, because it's already wet, the colours will blend so much easier. So don't be afraid to actually sort of add a bit more colour. Allow that to dry. I'm going to move on. So again, I'm taking my dark Poppy Parade. And if you're not sure of what you're actually looking at, because sometimes it is hard to tell, just bring in your stamp set and you can generally work out where you are. So I can see this petal here is actually this one, and this petal here is this one here that I've been to. So the one I'm working on now is this one here. So this little section I think is part of this petal here. So I'm going to start off again dark, add a little bit of the dark flirty flamingo and bring in the light. Okay, and then I'm going to go back in with my dark Poppy Parade and just blend them together. Okay, so you can see they start sort of coming together now. So I'm going to move on, move it around again. Dark Poppy Parade, dark flirty flamingo. And don't worry too much if you start losing the definition of a petal that's on the stamp, because it's nature. So don't worry if you suddenly realise you've coloured a wrong bit, a wrong colour, or you know it's not quite blending quite right, because it's all nature. So just keep playing with it until you're happy. Our basic white cardstock is a little bit more porous than what our old Whisper White used to be, so you do need to be a little bit careful. But the beauty of doing the no line technique is, even if you get bleeding out of the edges, we can remove those when we actually cut them out. So don't panic too much. And it takes a while for this to start building up, so don't feel disillusioned. It's taken, you know, a while. I'm obviously talking while I'm doing this. If I was doing this just naturally sitting at home, I'd be working a lot quicker. But the trick is to get those to blend, is to actually go over some of the darker colour, because then you'll get them to blend naturally. You can always come back and add that detail, as I say. And just remember, if you're travelling back this way, the inks are naturally going to start sort of blending together. This is a part of a petal that looks like it's sort of folded over. So I'm going to say most of that's probably going to be dark. So I'm actually going to use just the two colours for this one. Incidentally, the other thing as well is which ends of the pens you use, because obviously on the other end we have got the lovely brush end. I tend to use the brush end if I'm colouring a bigger area. So something like this with smaller petals, I will always go for the what I call sort of the pen end, because to me this is sort of you've got more control over where it's actually going. Again, that is preference, so don't, you know, if you're used to using the brush ends and you prefer that, then that's absolutely fine. So don't be afraid to go back to colours. As long as they're blending, that's all you're looking for. And you'll notice as well, when they dry, they actually dry a lot lighter than when they go on. So that's the other thing as well. So you don't want to keep building it up until you know that it is sort of dried and you can see where you're going. Now, this was the original petal I did. So now I'm going to work on the one next to it because I know that will be dry. So I'm going to work on this one. Again, the bigger the area, the more sort of you need to just sort of blend it together a little bit. And just touch it up as you go. So whilst I'm doing my best to try and follow the patterns of the petals, I'm not worrying too much if they're not quite following. We want to just get this colour down, and we want to get it all sorted onto our paper. So can you see how it's just naturally all coming together now? And those gaps will fill out shortly. Okay, so I'm going to do another one here. I'm not sure that's exactly where it appears, but I'm not worrying about it. That's where my petal's going to be. And then I'm going to do another one here. My apologies, my camera actually decided to switch itself off at that moment. So you can see here I've just finished these last little petals in the middle, and then the little gaps that we had, I actually just took my dark Poppy Parade and just coloured them into the centres. So wherever there was a little gap, I just sort of used sort of almost like a little dotting motion just to fill in those gaps, and that way you just get that depth for the centre of the flower. So I will continue with that one off camera just to finish it so that you can see how it looks when it's done, and we'll obviously use it in making a card a little bit later. But I thought it might be quite nice for you to see me actually create with the other colours as well. Okay, so having put that one to one side, now what I want to do is to try and create the yellowy orange one. Now, as I say, in the original, I used Daffodil Delight with Calypso Coral, so it gave you this sort of reddy orange, but this time I'm going to use Pumpkin Pie just to see what it looks like, see how the different colours look together. I like to sort of have a play around, but I did want to keep this red one because I think that's sort of, I think of red dahlias, although ours in the garden are purple, so that's there we go. So next thing I want to do is to take my stamp from previously. Now I'm going to bring in my, that is just staining on my stamp. I just wanted to check that. So this time I'm going to use Daffodil Delight. Now this is naturally a lighter colour in any event, but it will still be quite dark as it's stamped. So I'm going to stamp it off, and then I'm going to stamp it on and see what it looks like. I'm going to do another one next to it if I've got a room on this bit of paper. I just have, I think, just so I can have a look. See, that one is way too faint. I'm not going to be able to see that one in a million years. So we're going to stick with the second generation on the yellow. But as I say, it's always good just to test them because you can see sort of what they look like. Okay, so let's get started with these. So again, I'm going to use the dark Pumpkin Pie, and I'm going to use the light and dark Daffodil Delight. So just, you know, have a play around with the colours, see what you sort of, you know, like, and see how they blend together. I haven't used these three together, so we'll see how it works and we'll go from there. So again, I'm just using the pen ends of my pens. And you probably notice I tend to sort of keep them in my hand like this and work sort of with them. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of Pumpkin Pie. Dark Daffodil Delight. Now these colours are sort of way off from each other, so there's various ways that you can deal with that. You can try and blend them, see whether they will blend together, which they probably will. Daffodil Delight always looks a bit what I call dirty when it goes on, but when it's dry it's not. It's lovely and vibrant, so don't be put off by that if you think it's looking a bit sort of dirty. So do those together. I'm going to bring in a little bit more pumpkin, a little bit more of the dark. So because that colour's already been laid down, you'll see that the next time you put them together, they will sort of blend a bit better. But as I say, you know, the Daffodil Delight can look a bit dirty when it first goes down. I have got quite a sort of gap here, which I'm not overly happy about, but what I don't want to do is to play with it too much and then find that I've actually saturated it too much. So I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll come back and touch that up in a second. I'm going to move on to another petal that's sort of away from this one. You'll naturally find that some colours blend better than others. So, you know, if something doesn't work, then just, you know, move on to different colours. I think this will work. I think it's just going to take a little bit of time. So you can see the difference, how this looks a bit, sort of a little bit grubby, and this one's just drying off nicely now. So we'll start to see sort of the difference. And again, just going over the pumpkin pie because I want them to blend. But this is where you can see the difference. You do get quite a, you lose quite a lot of the orange. So traditionally, yellows and oranges are the hardest colours to blend. They're also the hardest colours to cover up in painting. I don't know why. It must be something to do with the pigment, I think. But there we go, it will sort of blend as you go, and you can see they're lightening all the time. Again, exactly the same. I always sort of look for petals that sort of stand out more, because then you can sort of fill in the gaps and it becomes sort of more obvious. Again, working downwards with the lightest colour. Now it might be that because I want these to be sort of full of colour, I'm using just these, but I might like the ends to be really, really light, in which case I might use the colour lifter. So again, it's just playing, see what you like, and see, you know, different flowers are different, how you want them to look. I mentioned the dahlias in our garden. Now they're purple, but the tips of them are actually very white, so that would be a challenge to create. Maybe that's for another day. I am finding that these two colours, you just need to be careful where you do blend them. So don't be too sort of vigorous with it. Just allow it to sort of naturally sort of join together. We're getting more of a line here, but it isn't a problem. So don't panic over it, because you can just go back in and just blend them again. So can you see how that line around the edge is now beginning to disappear? It's a little bit more obvious in the yellow than it is in the pink, but you can sort of, again, just sort of play with colours and see how you like them. I'm just going to add a little bit more orange to this petal here. So I'm finding where before in the pink and the red one, I could sort of go over the whole thing and it would still blend very nicely, because there's a distinct difference in the colours. I'm finding that I don't go right to the end when I'm colouring through. I just sort of do a little bit on the edge. So there you can see that's how I am doing the yellow and orange together. It's exactly the same technique. So whatever colours you're using, you can just, use them all in exactly the same way. Just take your time and try and work on a petal at a time. Don't try and do like 4 or 5 petals in the pumpkin pie and then go back, because you want the ink to still be wet, because that will enable them to blend together. Okay, so that's how I would do the yellow one. I don't want to have an hour-long video of me just colouring. I want to try and show you some sort of how I work with them. Okay, so now I'm just going to move on to the leaves very quickly. Now the leaves I think are the hardest thing to do, believe it or not. I think they're the hardest things to get to be quite sort of lifelike. And I'm going to use Granny Apple Green, but this time I want to stamp off several times. So I think I'm going for 4th generation, which still gives me quite a good outline. So it sort of hangs around the green. Okay, so I'm just going to use 2 colours, and then we can add some detail in if we want to. So I'm using Granny Apple Green Dark and Light, and I'm going to start off with one of my leaves. So I'm going to start with the stem and just build up into that leaf here. So like before, I'm starting sort of dark towards the bottom, because that's naturally going to be darker as it goes into the plant. And then I'm going to use the darker also to add the veins of the leaf. Okay, so once I've done that, I'm then going to start with the, I can see I've gone off a little bit, that's what I was hesitating for, but I'm not too worried about that. So now I'm going to start off with the light Granny Apple Green, and again I'm just bringing that colour in over the top. But what I want to do is I want to lose a little bit of the darkness of the veins. I don't want them to stand out really bad, in your face type of veins. I want them to be sort of more natural. So just spend some time just working on them, just to try and get them sort of more natural looking, really. I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll come back to it. You can see where I went a bit off piste here, but that's fine. I'm just going to change the shape of my leaf very, very slightly, just to cater for that. So as I say, don't be afraid if it, if you do something like that. A lot of it's going to be hidden anyway. So again, I'm just adding my veins. And then I'm going to work with the light green. And I'm working towards the centre, because I want all my colour to come back towards that centre point. And then see, I can colour over. And I'm just going to work over the veins towards the centre, just to try and blend those through. Okay, I'm going to let that dry, and then if necessary I would go back and add some more colour into that. Okay, so I will now finish all of these, and then I will come back and we'll put a card together. Hi Hi there, welcome back. I have now finished my flowers, as you can see, and I have cut out the most of them and my leaves. I just left this little bit to cut out because I wanted to just give you some tips on actually cutting them, and then we're going to make our card together. So this obviously has been cut out. Now, because we've used the no line technique, obviously there is no distinct line to follow, so it's just the coloured edges. Now, because I want to cut these close to those edges, don't be afraid to actually cut off some of what you've coloured. Now, this is particularly good if you've had a bleed as you've been colouring, so don't be afraid, not a lot, but if you just want to take a little fraction off of the actual petal side, then that is not going to hurt your design, and by doing that you just get a really nice clean edge. Now this one has bled just very slightly, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to whip that edge off, and then you can see it just removes all that from it, and then you can really shape your flowers as you want them to do. The other tip I have, because I do get comments about my fussy cutting, is try not to move your scissors. So you're just closing your scissors, and what you're going to do is you're going to move the paper, and by doing that, that enables you to get sort of curves on it. Now you obviously do get to a point where you've got to close your scissors to finish off, and that's fine, and then you can start again. And again, I've got to this point, so I'm just moving my scissors open a little bit, I'm twisting it and cutting. So I'm not actually physically removing my scissors from the actual paper, I'm literally just allowing them to do their work. So I've got to this point again, I'm opening my scissors so it's further into that point, twisting, cutting, turning and cutting again. So you can see that enables you to get a really nice smooth cut. And also you'll notice I'm holding my scissors at this angle. So what that does, if you use scissors straight, so if I cut like that, I get a blunt edge here. Now if I cut at this angle, although you can't see it by the naked eye, you get a little sort of camber on your edges, and that also helps to give you a really nice smooth cut. So automatically I will try and hold my scissors at this sort of angle rather than straight on. Okay, and then I can just come back around just to reshape that petal a little bit, and then you see you get a really nice sort of shape from that. Okay, so now we're going to make our card. So the first thing I want to do is my base card. So this is thick basic white, and this is English sizes, so it's 21 centimeters by 14.85, and then it's scored at 10.5 to give me my standard C6 card base. I've then gone for a piece of rich raspberry. I thought this would be quite fun just to add another element of colour into it, and this one is 9 centimeters by 13.35, so that's 1.5 centimeters smaller. And then I've gone for our beautiful cork paper. I love this cork paper. Now this is part of the Nature's Meadows suite, I believe. I hope I've said that right. Yes, it is. And it's just, it's some weirdest stuff, really, if I'm honest. It is paper, so it's quite thin, but it has this wood texture, and it is actually like cork. I don't know what it's made of, but it is beautiful, and it's got these sort of shiny bits in here which are almost sort of gold as well, so it's a really lovely paper. And this is 8 centimeters by 12.35, so again that's a centimetre smaller than our rich raspberry layer. I've also pre-stamped and heat embossed a greeting onto black, which I've cut out, and this is taken from the Hostess set through Celebration called In Your Words, and it's just got some really nice, quite unusual wording actually, but some really nice wording for different occasions. Now the original one I used, hope this card makes you smile, so that was our original one. And on this one I've used there is magic in every beginning. I like that. I think that's something new, something coming up. Okay, I will give you the measurements for the original card in a second. So what I'm going to do first of all on this is I want to actually distress my edges of my card just slightly. I think this cork gives a sort of a bit of a distressed look. So I'm just going to take the edges of my scissors, and you can do this as rough or as light as you want to really, but I'm just roughing up those edges, and if my scissors go in a little bit, I'm not too worried. I want it to be sort of bumpy and a little bit distressed, so just go for it. You'll get all these little bits on your desk. You can buy distressing tools. I do have my original Stampin' Up! Distressing tool somewhere, although we don't sell them anymore, but no doubt they will come back round at some point, because these sort of techniques all revive themselves over time. So again, just using my scissors. As you say, I'm not taking sort of too much care, and I'm not too worried about sort of what happens to this. I want this to be quite a distressed look. I might even sort of get my finger onto the corner, sort of fold that over a little bit, and just add a little bit of texture. I love texture on cards, and this cork paper sort of allows you to really sort of add some fun textures. Tear it if you want to, just whatever you feel you want to add to your card. Okay, so once I've got rid of all the debris, so this is my base, and I'm just going to stick this one flat onto here. Now what I want is I want these edges to remain sort of ruffled, so I'm not going to glue right to the very edges. I'm just going to glue up to them, if that makes sense. So I'm just a little way away. I don't want it to be completely flat. I want it to actually sort of raised off the paper on the edges. Also with the distressing technique, it's great because if you're not quite lined up, it doesn't matter. So it's a cheat's way as well. Now this paper I'm not going to ruffle, because I think it just, that gives it the frame with the distressed look. So I'm going to stick this one flat. It really is peculiar paper, but it's brilliant. Love it. Okay, and it's got like a smooth feel. It's very strange. Okay, so this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to position my flowers first, because I want to see how they're going to look on my card. And like I did on the original one, any pieces I cut off this edge here, so then I just added it as a part of decoration on the inside of my card. So don't go wasting all your hard work. You can sort of use it on other things. So I'm going to position these sort of here again. Then I'm probably going to add some greenery. Any odd bits that come off I might put somewhere else, I'm not sure. Add some greenery around. Add a third if you wish. I might just put a single leaf possibly there, or I might even come over the top. Just have a play around until you're sort of happy with your positioning really. So you know, just take some time to think about it. I've obviously got a bit of glue on my finger. See, I quite like that positioning. Okay, so that's roughly, I'm thinking, where I might go. I also want to glue my greeting on here, and then I might add some little gems sort of up here just to add a bit of decoration, and I think maybe some gold thread. So let's see. So I've got to sort of visualize where I've got those, so I'm going to sort of try and take them off as carefully as I can so that I can have a rough idea of where I had them. And the first thing I'm going to do, as I say, is to grab some thread, which I'm going to sort of loop around here. So I'm going to grab a couple of glue dots. I don't need many, just a couple, just to sort of hold everything in place. Not that one though. You can stick them down on direct, but unfortunately on the cork paper. Oh, that one has stuck. They don't always stick on the cork because it's got that soft sort of feel to it. Once they're stuck down solid, they're fine, but it's actually doing it. So I'm just going to wrap some of the gold thread. Now this is the trimmings from the suite that I can't remember the name of as we speak, but it comes with gold and silver. I can link that in the video description. It does have a bit of a mind of its own because it's on a roll, so it wants to sort of flip round into this sort of natural curl. So just persevere with it, and if you just try and straighten it a little bit, so you can see I've just sort of straightened that, so when I wrap it this time, hopefully it will stay a little bit closer. Okay, that dot's not quite in the right place I've got there, so I don't know whether it will let me remove it. Yes, it will. I'm not too worried because there's going to be things going over the top of it, so don't worry too much if that happens. I'm going to grab another glue dot because I want to just sort of have a play around with these, try and get them to where I want them. Thinking about where I'm going to be positioning my flowers as well. I don't think this will need any gems actually. I think it's going to look quite nice once the flowers are on top. Just going to put another one down here. Okay, so that's just held my loops in place. When I get everything on top, it should hold it firmly, and if it doesn't, then we can add some more at that point. So I now need to think about where I was positioning again. So I was kind of here and here, and I had a leaf sort of here and here, and then one at the top. And then my greeting, I think I'm going to pop onto dimensionals that will just go over the top, and that will help to hold that gold down. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully remove my flowers. Now, can you see where that's stuck? It's obviously got a little bit of glue or something on it, and it kind of stuck in place. If that happens, I would have taken advantage of it. Okay, so you can see where these two are going to go. So I'm just going to take some wet glue, and again, I don't mind if they stick up a little bit, so don't feel that you've got to stick them completely flat. I'm not using dimensionals because I don't want too much dimension on it, but I'm quite happy if the ends of my petals sort of don't sit completely flat. Okay, move that out for a moment. So I want to pop one of my flowers here. Now you can see it's going to be raised automatically because it's going over this gold here. So I'm just going to add some glue to the back. Position it exactly where I want it to be. Okay. Let's see, it's going to sort of stick up a little bit. And this one I'm going to pop down here. I'm not going to have a lot left over actually on this one to do something on my inside, but that's fine. Okay. I don't want to lose any of my leaves, so I'm trying to keep them within the design if I possibly can. Okay, I think that looks about right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold that in place roughly, and then I'm actually going to stick it to the back of my flower because then I know it's in the right place. Okay, and then I'm going to add glue to my flower. So you can put these onto dimensionals if you want to. Concentrate, Jo. There we go. If you want to put them on dimensionals, you can, because that'll add obviously another layer of height. Depends on what you're looking to achieve, really. Now if you get any little bit of leakage of glue, try and remove it while it's wet if you can. If not, get a little glue remover just to remove anything. Okay, so I'm just going to a little tad of glue just at the back here, just so that is flat, because I don't want this to come away. Okay, that's fine. So this time I'm just going to take my scissors and I'm just going to, from the back, remove any little excess pieces. So I haven't really got anything really worth sort of preserving here, so I'm not going to worry about those. Okay, and then finally I'm going to take some dimensionals. I've run out of the small ones at the moment, so don't forget to use little pieces at your edge as well. It's all good stuff. And then I'm going to pop this over here and let it sort of find its natural sort of resting place. Okay, so there we go. There we have our finished card. So you can see there's quite a sort of stark difference to what we had before, but you still get that lovely striking flowers. So it's a completely different card, just obviously using different colours. Looking at these colours here, I actually prefer this version. So this is Pumpkin Pie and Daffodil Delight, where this one was Daffodil Delight and Calypso Coral. So, you know, they do look quite different, but I think I actually prefer the Pumpkin Pie one. So I hope you like that today. I'm hoping that if you've got any questions, you'll contact me, because I'm always available to help where I can. I'm going to quickly give you the measurements of this card here. Now this is a DL card in the UK, so it's 10 centimetres by 20 centimetres. So you need obviously double that, so it's a 20 by 20 square, and then you just fold it in half down the middle here. So the basic white layer is 9.4 by 19.4. Your black layer, dotty layer, is 9 by 19. And then your next basic white layer is 7 centimetres by 17 centimetres, and then finally you've got 6.5 by 16.5. So you can see that's how I've made the 4 layers, and that is taken from the Pattern Party Hostess DSP. So you can see there's 2 variations. Hope you like that. I think I might just need to put another little dimensional underneath those sections there, so I'll do that in a second, but you can see that that's the finished card when you're done. So I hope that's helped you. As I say, if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. Speak to you soon. Bye.